Hi everyone, this is your host Prasha and welcome to a brand new episode of Her STEM Story. First of all, a shout out to our new patron, Circe Werba, for becoming a monthly patron on Patreon and for a separate donation as well. Thank you so much, Circe, for sticking around ever since the beginning of the show. Circe is a research geologist at National Energy Technology Lab in Oregon and also the editor of the popular IG page, Women Doing Science. If you like our show and would love to get a free diversity sticker, then you're in luck because we've partnered with Genius Lab Gear to get you one right away. If you leave us a review on iTunes, take a screenshot and DM it to us on any social media at Her STEM Story. After we get that, we'll select a lucky winner to win this free diversity sticker. For the next 2 weeks, this show will be hosted by a very special guest, Katherine Hatcher. She's a STEM Advocacy Institute fellow and is launching her very own podcast in August. I had the honor of mentoring Katherine in podcasting and now of interviewing her. Listen on to learn about her STEM story and how she started her Grad self-care social media account. What's the inspiration for her upcoming podcast, and what is she bringing to her STEM story in the coming weeks?
Welcome to Her STEM Story, a podcast about real women with extraordinary science, technology, engineering, and mathematics stories. In this show, we'll talk to some absolutely inspiring women and highlight some women-led organizations in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We'll learn more about their work, their struggles, and how they think we can close the gender gap in STEM professions. Keep listening to get inspired.
How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm just hanging out here with my cat, Buffy, and having a good morning.
Good, awesome. And again, thank you so much, Katherine, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, I'm so excited because you're going to do this takeover of the show for the next couple of weeks, which is great for me because I don't have to do any work. I'm going to get a break. So it's super cool. But also the whole point is to get, a little diverse perspective in terms of the questions you will ask. And I'm really excited to learn more from, the interaction of your experiences with our guests. So super excited. Thank you so much for doing that. Because I know it takes a lot of commitment and time from your end as well.
Yeah, it's been a fun experience. So I've learned quite a bit about the podcasting process. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Of course. So before we jump into the whole, all about your podcast and our podcast and all the podcasting goodies, tell us a little bit about your research at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign.
So I've been here for 4 years. I'm starting my 5th year now in August. And when I first came here, I thought I was going to be working on only circadian rhythms research because that's been my advisor's research leading up to when I started. So then I joined the lab and she immediately throws me in this project looking at how exposure to a chemical that's found in plastics, how that affects behavior. But we were looking at actually animals that were exposed like multiple generations prior. Mm-hmm. And so I started doing that project looking at this chemical exposure. And then I did another project looking at different cognitive training models and how that affects circadian rhythms. So at this point, I've done now 5 different projects in my time in the lab. And so when I explain to people what my research is, I like to say, I look at how environmental factors, predominantly environmental endocrine disruptors, how they affect behavior and the brain. And I use rodent models to do that. But then my thesis is actually going to be exploring how chemical exposure impacts sleep quality and depression in women that are in that menopausal transition. So going from before menopause and then in the menopause transition before they hit what we call postmenopausal. So women that are still experiencing menstruation, but kind of going through that period of time. So I've worked with rodents, but now I'm also working with humans. I'm kind of all over the place, but for the most part, I've done this looking at this one type of chemical. They're called phthalates. It's a class of chemical. They're found in polyvinyl chloride plastic products, but then they're also found in consumer products and personal care products. So that's a big part of what I study. But then I also study things like light at night and shifting light schedules and having animals wake up during the day to do a task instead of when they would normally be sleeping. So I kind of do quite a few things, looking at mainly behavior, but then also some brain stuff.
So for people who may not know exactly what circadian rhythms are, tell us a little bit about what it is.
So I like to explain circadian rhythms as being behaviors and biological functions that exhibit 24-hour rhythms. And so what that means is something like sleep. We sleep at around the same time every day, and we wake up around the same time every day. And so importantly, circadian rhythms, they exhibit these peaks in activity or peaks in their expression at around the same time of every day. And they occur either in the presence of environmental cues, so something like the rising and setting of the sun, but they also persist in the lack of environmental cues. So if you were to throw humans in a cave where there's no more light, they would still exhibit the same, approximately same sleeping schedule that they would have before. So circadian rhythms, it's a very broad term to describe anything that falls under this category of something that exhibits this 24-hour pattern. So we think of things like body temperature, blood pressure, certain behaviors, metabolism, activity, cognition, hormone release, like all these things exhibit those 24-hour patterns. The word circadian actually means about a day. Circa dia is about a day in Latin. So that's where the term comes from.
That's so interesting. I know sleep is such a big, topic nowadays, especially that, with Ariana Huffington's Thrive being such a big thing, especially on social media and stuff, and talking a lot about sleep schedules. And, we're going from where we popularized, the night owls and hustlers to now let's go back and let's sleep enough and let's take care of ourselves, which gets us into your whole grad self-care, which is how we know you on Instagram. And tell us a little bit about that part, especially was it anyhow related to what you study, or how did that come about to be?
It's actually not related to what I study at all. And so it seemed very separate from my life as a graduate or my life as a scientist, which I think was actually a good thing when I first got started. So I like to say that I think my grad self-care journey started when I was about 9 years old, because I've actually been struggling with mental health and an eating disorder since I was an adolescent. And I was first diagnosed with depression when I was around 13 years old. And I've kind of been struggling with that process of learning how to navigate the world and navigate my goals and navigate my life in this cloud of depression. I also had an anxiety disorder that I didn't know I had. I think people assumed it was like high functioning, high achieving, but it was actually my anxiety disorder. And that kind of carried itself through undergrad. And I've always had to learn how to I've had to learn how to manage myself and manage my time and manage my goals and my productivity through this kind of this I keep saying cloud, but this cloud of depression and anxiety. And so during the first 2 years after I graduated undergrad, I was actually teaching high school. And during that time, my anxiety got so bad that I was experiencing panic attacks like almost every single day. And then I quit teaching and went back to school. I did a master's, and that experience was a little bit better, but it was still pretty difficult. And I was finally going to therapy and was trying to get on medication, but my health insurance stuff was weird. And so it was around that time that I started realizing, like, if I get the help that I need, then I'll be able to do what I want to do. And so then I came to Illinois and started seeing a dietitian regularly for eating disorder. And she was the one who then suggested I go to therapy. So then I go to a therapist, and then I started going like to group therapy and got put on medication. And then through all of this, around my second year of graduate school at Illinois, somebody or both my dietitian and my therapist were like, you need to get a hobby, because I was going through some really tough stuff. So like, get a hobby, do something like outside of the lab, outside of work, to get your mind off of the things that are going on. And I was like, okay, we'll give this a try. So I did this stereotypical like painting or cross-stitching or whatever, those little things that a lot of people try at first. And I just slowly but surely started building this hobby platform of all these different hobbies that I was doing. And then it was so I was doing this through my third year. And then kind of toward the end of my third year in that summer is when the PH Depression, now called PhD Balance, came out. And I started noticing there was this community of people in the graduate school social media community sharing their stories, being more open and honest. And I, on my personal account, started getting more involved in that. But my personal account has always been, not super active. I didn't really use it. And so I kind of started thinking about what I've been doing to take care of myself and to move myself through depression and anxiety and still be successful and still be moving toward my graduation goals or whatever. And so it was kind of like a overnight decision. It was late September, early October of last year. I was like, I've kind of gotten myself to this place of a consistent routine. I do things outside of the lab. I'm not stressed all the time. I'm stressed, but not all the time. So I feel like I have a story to tell. And so then kind of from there, I guess it was born.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
It was overnight. It was like, I have found a way to take care of myself, and I feel like I want to share that story. People who follow me know that, like, it's not just about, oh, Katherine has it all figured out. Katherine has her shit together and she is perfectly in place. Like, it's not that. It's sharing more than that, being vulnerable and really sharing that experience and that process. That's amazing. And I think you've grown it within a short amount of time. You've grown it to like 5,000 plus. So congrats on that. And I'm sure it's all organic. Yeah, I think it's, for me, I think, and from what I've noticed in general at least with our graduate school community, if you're strictly wanting to be science communication or something, that's different. That's a different story. But for those of us who really want to connect with each other, it's really that point of being vulnerable, opening yourself up a little bit. And you don't have to tell your life story on social media, by no means. But even just being like, hey, I've had a bad day today. Or there's a nice little trend going on right now of people sharing their rejections. Like, being open about those experiences, it connects all of us because we all experience something relatively similar at some point.
Yeah. So. And I think you put it really well that, you kind of made the best out of a situation that wasn't working for you in terms of, if you were struggling from mental health issues or depression. And I think the best thing about your journey and you as a person, I think you're very, very good at not just receiving feedback, but like applying it like right away. So I think, which is very, very hard for a lot of people to do, is to apply themselves. And I think you do that really well. And I'm so glad that you took that and then said, okay, now if I figured it out, I need to really help out other people. And I think that's the authenticity that comes through, that anyone can see through on your social media page, or even if they interact with you on any other platform. So, really congratulations on that, because in today's social media world, I think it's such a difficult place to maneuver when half the stuff we see is fake or wrong or made up or too filtered or too touched up.
Or people following trends. Like, it's okay to jump on some trends. I'm absolutely okay with that. I've done that several times. But like, that's not what my page is about. It's not about following whatever trend is going on. Sometimes it's about making those trends. Sometimes you are the one who develops the trend and then people follow it. And some days, a post will get 30 likes. Some days a post will get 300 and something. And I have no idea the difference between those two. But
So I think people who are listening might be really interested in learning because, as starters or even in, people don't realize even 5K is a big milestone. Like, we only concentrate on accounts like, oh, how can I be at 1 million followers? How can I be at 100,000 followers? But those are the people that are in the limelight. But when you're starting off, like, all those people have gone through these milestones, right? They've gone through 1,000 to 500,000 or 10,000 or whatever. And it has become such an integral part of everyone's life, like whether it's your profession, your business, your hobby, or whatever. Like, social media is, is really, really close to all of us. So, and all of us, it's like a game, right? So most of us are trying to grow it. So tell us a little bit, if you had to give 1 or 2 tips about the best practices that you've learned through your organic growth on Instagram, what would that be?
The first 2 that come to mind. So the first one is post regularly. And that doesn't just mean on your feed if you're trying to grow something like Instagram, whereas that's where I've had my most experience. Posting every single day, both on the feed and in your story, and having those be posts that people can engage with. So I am very much a quality over quantity person, but sometimes it's like, I'm just going to post a picture of me in a pool because that's what I've been doing today. Yeah. And sometimes that's what it comes off. But at least when I first got started, I tried to make every single post worth engaging with in some way for at least a handful of people. And then even your stories can be you can make them more engaging by posting funny pictures or, sharing your story, having like question bubbles or having those little reaction slide things on Instagram. But I want to make a plug here too, that if you're going to share videos of you talking, make sure you use captions. And there are free apps that you can use to make captions for your app, for your videos. Like AutoCap is one I think that is free. Yep. I use Clip-O-Matic, and I paid I think $5 for it when I first got it. And it's been, I've used it thousands of times at this point. So then my other piece of advice would be authentic and legitimately authentic. And sometimes that does mean, like for me, sometimes that means I do post a more filtered image because that's just the aesthetic that I want to portray with a particular post. But more often than not, if I'm posting a very filtered or a very edited image, it's coming with a more authentic caption. So I try to be authentic as much as possible. And being honest, like, there are some aspects of my story I can't share, and I will share as much as I can. But that authenticity is where people will connect with you. And regardless of what goal you're moving toward, like, the more authentic you are, the more quality engagements you will get with people. Like, more often than not, the more authentic I am on my feed or on my story, I get multiple messages from people thanking me for sharing whatever aspect. And it could be anything as little as being like, hey, I had a bad day today. And other people will be like, I had a bad day too. Or it could be me sharing about panic attacks or sharing about certain traumas in my life. And it's just a matter of coming to the table and being your authentic self. That's where you're going to find true connection. Yeah.
And you mentioned a little bit about captions. So this is my question to everyone who is really good at this, and you are. So tell me, sometimes, right, we see a picture and we see a caption, and they may not be related to each other. So how do you guys come up with that? Like, I've tried it, and I don't think I really get it. So maybe you know a secret that I don't. So tell us, like, how do you kind of make that, so is this do you think about the messages first and then pick the pictures? Do you pick the pictures first, then think about the messages? Or are you going through your Instagram on a day-to-day basis and wherever you're at mentally and then building a message around it?
I know there are people out there, and this is no shade to them, this is just how their Instagram is. They are very much like pretty picture, whatever the hell caption I want to put with it.
Mm-hmm.
That is not my style. And that's just how, like, I don't do that. And then again, I'm not I don't know, edit that out. But I'm not very big on picture first, caption later.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think of, what do I want to say today, and what image will complement this caption. That's why on my feed, you'll get a mix of text as well as quotes and pictures, and you get kind of a healthy balance of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm thinking of whatever the message is that I want to portray first. Sometimes it is like, ooh, I really like this quote, so I'm going to have to think of a caption to go with it.
Yeah.
Or like, hey, I have this really cool picture. But most of the time, the picture is coming as like a place of just kind of drawing attention to whatever the message I'm trying to say. I am very much like a caption person. My captions are where the content is for me most of the time. And Instagram wasn't built that way, so that makes sense why a lot of people go for picture first, caption later.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest too, I tried the whole like planning out my posts in advance, and it just didn't work for me. I started this thing in the beginning of the year with a good team of women. It was called Year of Grad Self-Care. It was going to be this big campaign for the whole year, and it just, after like 3 months, I was like, I am over this. I hate having my posts planned out.
Yeah.
It no longer felt authentic. And that was like, my page was built on authenticity. So I don't want to then schedule and plan and go that way. So.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing that I'm getting from this is that obviously, like, having a goal in mind of what you want people to take from this can help you like do this well. Like, you'll be able to attract the right amount of people. You'll be able to say the things that you want to say. Because I do find myself putting posts out there. Of course, if you're doing for the podcast, it's much easier. You know what you want people to do. But if you're trying to do for yourself, like I'm now contemplating coming back on my Instagram for Her STEM Story. And then showing more of me, because I feel like, that's also part of the show.
Absolutely.
And I was doing that more before, and I loved it. Like, I absolutely enjoyed it. I didn't care about the following at the time. Now I have to follow this rigid grid, and I'm just like not having it. Like, I am pissed. Like, I'm like, no. Yep. Like, it stops me from being me and, like really showing my face and, talking about my struggles, my story. And I tried to do that on my personal page. And now I don't know about you, but at least with me, with the personal page, it's like it's family and friends, and it's people who've known me for too long and who already have like preconceived judgments about who I am. And it's just like, I may not feel like sharing those things with them, like I don't want to share, oh, I had a bad day with someone I know from like high school, or even my family that says, oh my God, what happened? Why are you sad today? And so I feel like there's a certain level of judgment that comes with like that kind of group. And for the life of me, I can't grow that page. Like, I'm stuck at 690 something for months. Like, I can't grow it. I'm like,
it's all right. I think my personal page has like 230 people.
Yeah,
like,
because I feel like if you piggyback off of what's already working and then bring more value to what's already working, then people really will take it well also. And you can like kind of, hit two targets with one arrow or whatever. But, if you feel like, I feel like that if we did more of what's working, and then of course, as you said, like be more authentic and not let like grid stop you or aesthetic stop you, and then just have a goal, right? Just have that big goal of why you're doing this and why should you share this particular story with people. And I absolutely love the idea that, I don't care about the picture, which is great, because I feel like Instagram is like the algorithm, right? People keep talking about this nasty algorithm that's messing up everything. That's been out there since 2016. So it's
it's nothing new. I see people talking about the algorithm. I'm like, what? No.
Yeah, and I think all it's trying to do is keep you on the app.
Yep.
It wants you to stay longer. That's all it is. So
it's good. That's how they make money.
Yeah, and if you have good captions, that's how people will stay. Otherwise, they'll keep scrolling, you know? So they're all really connected, and I feel like it's a good topic just for everyone who's starting new or who's still like kind of trying to understand the platform. It's a lot of fun, though. I think at the end of the day, at least for you and me, who are not selling anything yet, it's a lot of fun.
And I want to make a plug, too. I use the app Canva, Canva, and it's a free app to use like their basic services. And it's a fantastic app if you just want to, build that Insta aesthetic or to make prettier pictures. They have a lot of great stock photos. You can use your own images. You can add text. You can add icons. So it's a really great way to build images for Instagram, but then also Twitter and Facebook and other platforms. So people that might want to add a little bit more flair to their Instagram or Twitter game, then that's the app that I use most of the time. So I started off using PowerPoint because that's what I knew how to do. And most of my images that I first used, like up until I think January or February of this year, were made through PowerPoint. So
and we've been struggling between the two. I love Canva. I do everything on Canva. I set up posters for work in Canva. I do letters and letterheads and artwork and everything. Like we do our Christmas cards on Canva. Like we don't do actual physical cards. We just do online cards, but I would make them on Canva and whatnot. So Canva is by far my favorite free tool that's out there. And I have been going back and forth with PowerPoint these days because our style guide is on PowerPoint now. So it's much more easier because everything is there. But that being said, tell us what's your favorite resource if it's something other than Canva.
In terms of for social media, one of my favorite resources beyond Canva would be Clip-O-Matic. I think I'm going to plug that one again. It's what I use to do captions for my stories, and I've done a few timeline photos using it, and it is very easy to use. I don't know how it works with other languages because I only use it for American English, but it does do a pretty good job of picking up, little weird ways that you say things. But it's also very easy to edit the captions. And so it is just a great way to make your content more accessible. And I'll be 100% honest with you, 9 times out of 10, if I see a story or a timeline image or video where there isn't a caption, I honestly, most of the time, am not going to watch it because I'm probably doing something else and shouldn't really be on my phone anyways. And so it's not just for accessibility purposes. It's going to have people stay and listen to your story or listen to your timeline video because they might be on the train and not have headphones, or they might be binge watching Grey's Anatomy like Katherine has been and doesn't want to pause so I can watch a video. And it just makes it more accessible for everyone, not just people who might be hearing impaired.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's amazing. It's a very easy to use resource, and it's different for different different softwares. I think iTunes is Clip-O-Matic, then Android is AutoCap and whatnot. So that is a great segue into learning more about the guests that you're interviewing in the next 2 episodes for Her STEM Story. Tell us a little bit about the theme of those 2 episodes, and then we will jump right into your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you and I first started talking about me doing the hosting for a couple of episodes, I think we settled on this idea of working with people who have some sort of disability and them discussing their story and navigating STEM through that lens. And we reached out to a few people, and the 2 people that we actually got a hold of, one, her name is Stephanie. Her handle is Steph Sci Access. And she does not have a disability. However, she is somebody who advocates for people of all sorts of abilities. And she has been working with a couple of centers on campus. She knows how to work with Braille. She knows how to make figures for textbooks and things that are for individuals who might be visually impaired. So she, and then on her on her Instagram story, she talks a lot about different ways that she improves accessibility in science. And she's also about science communication, but then also making social media science communication more accessible. And so she comes to the table with a really interesting story from that perspective of how any Joe Schmo on the street who's using Instagram can make it more accessible for more people. So she's fantastic. She has a fantastic story to tell, and I'm excited about that one. Mm-hmm. And then Gigi from Orchids on My Mind, she is a fantastic young scientist. She just started working at a university, I think in the last year, and she's working in a chemistry lab, and she has been battling some chronic illnesses for a long time. And she just has a really interesting perspective on how she has learned to navigate the world of research from kind of this young, fresh perspective. And I'm really excited about her story too. The whole time we were talking, I love this. She was babysitting some cats, and she just had the video of the cats the whole time. And she was just feeding this old cat like wet food, and it was the most precious thing ever.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Not that has anything to do with the story, but she just was such a joy to talk to, and has been such an awesome person on Instagram to follow, and she has a lot of great things to say too. So
yeah, no, that's super cool. I know, when we were reaching out to people, we really wanted to make this more on the lines of, sharing stories of people with disabilities in STEM and how we can all support them. And Stephanie did a great job of explaining us how we can all do it in our daily life with something as little as, structuring your hashtags and using captions and just being more mindful of people who may have hearing or visual impairments and stuff like that. But what the other thing that we learned was a lot of disabled people did not have the time to reach out or to share their stories. And I think I was reading something on Twitter too in these lines that, someone was looking for people with disabilities in STEM, and they were finding it hard to make those connections. But I think we should respect that in terms of, these people have so much going on health-wise. They have a lot of doctor's visits and a lot of surgeries and a lot of different things that they need to be there for, that their schedules may not always allow for them to spend an hour or so with us. But, that being said, we'll try our best to showcase them, and we'll keep reaching out, and we'll keep seeing if we find someone. If they reply, if they're free, then, it doesn't have to be just July. Like, we can do this all year long. So, but I have way more respect for their schedules after this attempt that we made to make a lot of these connections that we may not have realized before we reached out, right?
Yeah, and I think that's an important aspect of intersectionality that may not get addressed as much, especially on this end of the spectrum, looking at individuals who have different abilities, is that we have to adjust the table, whatever that looks like, for that particular person and that particular set of identity. Because I feel like, at least in our community of STEM, there are certain aspects of identity that are getting more well recognized, and that's very important. But in order for us to really reach everybody, we have to listen and adjust as needed. And I think that is how we are going to learn as a community, and how we're going to grow as a community and make the table more accessible for everyone.
Yes, definitely. So again, I think we're delivering a lot of value in terms of, what people can do in their day-to-day life, which I'm super excited. And then also very, very excited to listen to Gigi's story and all that she has learned from her journey, and how we can all support each other in this male-dominated, field, pretty much. So now, let's talk about your podcast, the Endocrine Disruptors podcast. Tell us, what's the goal of your show, and what will be that one big takeaway that people will definitely get from the show?
Yeah, so I kind of came into this podcast idea early this year with you, thinking that I was going to be the catch-all for all aspects of intersectionality in STEM. And that was a huge, lofty goal that I am glad that you and Fenwell were like, okay, Catherine, we get you, calm down, pick a smaller goal and then work your way from there. And I think that was important for me. I tend to be very big picture and sometimes forget about the little things. And so I took a step back and really thought about, okay, what am I passionate about? What am I excited to talk about on a daily basis? And it came down to hormones. I love hormones. I could talk to you about any hormone all day, every day. And that's just something in science that I've gotten really interested in the last probably 5 to 8 years or so. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to talk to people who study hormones, but it's not just going to be about that. It's not just going to be about the science. Because another thing that I love is hearing about how people got to where they are. So that kind of journey. Like you learn some of the most interesting facts about people by hearing about their story of how, and I mean, you know this, that's why we're here on Her STEM Story, but you learn about, I guess you learn more about their journey and the battles that they've had to overcome, their struggles that they've learned, the advice that they've gained, the resources that they've tapped into. You learn so much about that by asking somebody, how did you get here? And so the goal of my podcast is to really highlight the diverse voices that are in the field of endocrinology, whatever that looks like. And I'm keeping the people who come into the show very broad, like they can study hormones or endocrine disruptors, which are types of chemicals, in any capacity, whether or not it's hard, deep, wet science, or even more sociological sciences, because there are people that study hormones in that regard too. And so bringing them in here, not just showing the diversity in the questions that we ask as scientists, but also highlighting the diversity of the voices and the individuals and the stories that are within this field. And so kind of bringing together science communication and storytelling from that regard. So it'll be a little mix of science and a little mix of like conversations over beers with your friends. Like that's kind of the feel that I'm going for. Yeah. And I hope to highlight, and this kind of comes back to my original goal, really the diversity of the folks that are studying hormones and really get down to that. And so I hope to highlight that through Instagram and through the blog so you can actually see and hear the individuals that are talking to you through the podcast.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so excited to learn all about the guests and, how you kind of conduct the show. And I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm really, really excited and looking forward to it. So tell us a little bit, like to wrap up, like tell us where people can find you and where they can find this upcoming show. When does it come out? Just a little bit dates and details. So that we can get everyone like super excited for this.
Yeah. So the show is going to be endocrinepod.com. We have a website. It's just not launched yet. And then we're also on Twitter and Instagram at endocrinepod. And we are launching August 6th. There will be a couple of episodes that come out right away, and then we'll follow up weekly with at least one episode, maybe a mini episode once or twice a month. And then we are also on Patreon. I don't remember the exact link, but I will send it to you so you can include it. So we are asking for patrons. We're looking for the first 10 people to support us who will be considered founding members and founding supporters, which I don't know what that will mean, but most likely you'll get a special recognition from me. But then personally, I'm on Instagram at grad_selfcare. And I have a personal Instagram, but you can follow me there or not. It's up to you. And then on Twitter, I am at super chiasmatic, which that's a nerdy plug for the part of the brain that circadian rhythms are thought to be mainly regulated in. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. So if anybody's ever wondered where my Twitter name comes from.
I did. I wondered. So good. Thank you for picking that up. It's awesome. We'll have all the links to follow Katherine. But before I let you go, tell us your favorite book.
do I want to? Yes, I'll say that one. So one of my favorite books, I have a lot because I love reading, but one of my favorite books, it's going to go back to my nerdy science roots. It's called Not Quite a Miracle. It's by John Franklin. And it's this fantastic book where I think this is where my dreams came from of storytelling and science, but he mixes science communication by explaining different types of neurosurgeries, from repairing the ulnar nerve in a boy's arm so he can play baseball, to actually performing like removal of tumors from a brain. He explains that, but from the lens of telling the stories of the neurosurgeons, but then also the patients. And so it's a very easy to read book. It's an old book though, so relatively old, and there aren't that many copies. So if you want to see, do I want to try to find this book first? John Franklin actually won a Pulitzer Prize for a short story called Mrs. Kelly's Monster. And if you just Google Mrs. Kelly's Monster, John Franklin, you can normally find a PDF on one of the first couple of links, so you can read it for free. And it's one of the stories that's from the book. It's written slightly different in the book, but it helps you get like an idea of how he does his writing style. And he's amazing. I highly recommend at least reading that short story. I'll make a plug too for another author I really like, because one of my favorite movies is Arrival, the one about aliens and linguistics, and that's actually based off of a short story as well, and I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but it's from Stories of Our Lives and Others, or something like that, and it's a fantastic collection of short stories, so highly recommend that one as well.
That's awesome. Again, thank you so much, Katherine, for all the great work that you're doing, and your resilience to keep trying new things and making time for everything that really gets you excited is very inspiring. And definitely you're one of those people who inspires me on a daily basis. So thank you so much for doing all that. And thank you for being a guest host as well as a guest on the show. Thank you. Yeah,
thank you, Prasha. And for those who don't know, for those listening, Prasha has been my podcast coaching mentor, coach, guru person for like over 6 months now. And she is an amazing human and an amazing coach and an amazing mentor. So if you have a chance to engage with her from that perspective, I highly, highly recommend. She has been a life changer for me in terms of just how I approach my goals and my everyday life, I guess, at this point.
Oh, thank you. That was so sweet. I'll put this piece right in front of the episode so everyone knows how awesome I am. Yes, thank you. Thank you for those kind words, Katherine. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
And that was Katherine with her amazing STEM story. Please use the links in the episode notes to find out more about Katherine and her work. If you listen to our show, take a screenshot, post it on IG or Twitter, and tag us in your posts. Our social media handle is Her STEM Story. See you again next week. Thank you so much for listening.